You know, the ones that go to the Olympia, they'll look the other way. There's ways to get around it for sure. Theoretically, if they're not allowed, then aren't you cheating?
I needed an anchor point.
Lay hold of it. You lay hold of it.
So you can make some progress forward.
Looks like that might be worth living. And when that thing tells you to quit, you look at it in his eye and say, I ain't going nowhere.
You find the meaning that sustains you in life, and you find the patterns of action that redeem the world, both at the same time.
Where we collectively discover light in life's darkest moments. Mainstay Podcast. Hi, so quick disclaimer before this video starts. This is not a normal episode. Normally I have guests on here and we are working on getting a second mic so I can have them with me here in person instead of remote. If you want to support us in that endeavor, we have a Patreon. Link will be in this video right here. Otherwise, it's Mainstay on Patreon. Thank you for watching and enjoy. The best way for me to understand you is to bring me back to the start of your life, your own life purpose, just the culmination of everything to the point you're at now.
Oh, well, that's a loaded question, Brooke.
Yeah.
That's a really open-ended question. Yeah, so, I mean, I could go a couple different ways to answer that. I would say I grew up with my family in upstate New York. I was born in Germany. We moved to the States when I was 2. But that being said, we got to travel a lot when I was younger because I have family over in Europe. So that I think played a really big role in kind of how I was brought up and how I view the world, because I have gotten to know so many people from so many different countries in my life that it really did allow me to be a little bit more open-minded and accepting of other people, cultures that I either didn't understand or, maybe I had a better understanding of those things than other people that I was surrounded by growing up, which, I'm blessed for that. So very grateful for all of those opportunities. And then, I grew up, I went to college in upstate New York as well, and I am not a cold weather person. So the second the opportunity presented itself to move down south, I took it. I lived in Jacksonville for about 6 months, and then I came up to Atlanta. And at the time I was in, the first industry that would take me up for a full-time job, which was the logistics industry. I worked for a trucking company for about 1.5 years, and it was very soul-sucking, very miserable. And that was when I really realized that I wanted to do something a little bit more meaningful with my life. And right exactly at the beginning of COVID, I quit my job, perfect timing, and I was unemployed for about 1 year. So that's when I got certified to be a trainer. And, March of 2021, I got hired by One Life. Started as a trainer there, was able to work my way up to fitness director. And here I am now. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's a little bio for me.
Yeah, I think it totally does. You said that you understood different cultures more easily and were less judgmental. Why do you think that is? What do you think was the reason why traveling made you so much more open-minded?
Sorry, I think you cut off, Brooke. You said, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, why do you think that the amount of culture you experienced made you more open-minded to people of other countries and other beliefs?
Yeah, I think, it was just kind of being exposed to a bunch of different cultures and languages, and just understanding that, the way we do things in the States isn't how we do things everywhere else. I think a lot of people here can tend to be very closed-minded, and they just have the opinion that their parents had when they were being brought up. Whereas, if you can kind of venture out of your comfort zone and start understanding that the world is a much bigger place than just, your hometown or your home state, it kind of gives you an idea that things they don't have to be the same, and that's okay, if that makes sense.
I really like that things don't have to be the same. When you talk about getting out of your comfort zone, it's really interesting because you're the reason why I'm kind of in the job I'm in now, which is fitness training. And honestly, if it wasn't for you, my life would look completely different right now. We kind of talked about that before the podcast started in multiple ways. And I think one of the reasons why I'm so intrigued and wanted to talk to you today is because you are one of those people who has accomplished a lot for someone your age. How old are you?
I'm 26.
26. Wow. And you rose to the ranks of fitness director from a fitness trainer, being in the fitness industry for 2 years?
Yeah, so what's cool is I had actually, One Life was my first job as a trainer after getting my certification. And I got hired March of 2021 as a trainer, and July of 2021, I basically got promoted to the fitness director role. So it was about 4 months or so before, they moved me up. And, I spent another year at the perimeter location. And then, they moved me up to Crabapple, and now I've spent about a year there. So it's been fun. And it is crazy how much I've learned in my role just by moving locations. If I really wanted to be deep, I could compare that to going to other countries and seeing the difference and how things work. But truly, like, Crabapple is very different from the perimeter location in many, many ways. And I don't think that I would have been able to grow in this role had I not left.
Mm. And you mentioned going out of your comfort zone. I think one of the reasons or some people would say, one of the reasons why you've been so successful is because you are someone I can tell doesn't really seem to have a comfort zone, if that makes sense, from the outside looking in.
Well, it's funny you say that. So when I was getting ready to move from New York down to Florida, this was the first time that I was going to be like really moving away. I mean, I went to college about 3.5 hours away from home. And when I graduated a semester earlier from all of my friends. So I was the only one leaving school. I went home for about a month. I took the job, and I was in Jacksonville within 2 months of my graduation in December. And my parents were completely freaking out because I'm the baby of the family, and they really were worried about me kind of like leaving home that far away. I mean, moving across the country. And I was so nervous, and I just couldn't show it because I knew if my parents knew that I was nervous, they would have a mental breakdown. So, I just kind of was looking for like inspiration online. I was like reading some things. And I came across this one picture, and it was just a word picture, and it said, "Life begins at the end of your comfort zone." And what's funny is I actually made that my lock screen, back in 2019 when I moved, 2019, beginning of 2019 when I moved down south. And it's been my lock screen ever since. So maybe that's helped.
It seems to me like you're the type of person who, once you learn a life lesson, you kind of stick with it and you hold it close to you. What is that? Would you say that's the reason why you were able to become a fitness director and even be so financially supported through this role that you were able to buy a house for such a young age, like 26? A lot of people can't even live in their own apartment, let alone get a house. What would be the number one most important thing to your success would you attribute it to in terms of a life lesson?
So, yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely right. I'm pretty good about learning lessons, and kind of holding on to those. If I have to relearn a lesson, and kind of holding on to those, if I have to relearn a lesson, then, I really need to kind of focus on what I'm doing. But, as it pertains to buying a house, I mean, I can really attribute that to my mom. My parents fully supported me through college, and, I'm blessed for that. But the one thing my mom did is she gave me a credit card, and she said, "Don't buy things that you can't afford. If you don't have the money in your account now, just don't even bother using the card. Don't bother buying it, right? And, at this point in my life, I was like, oh, what do I need a credit card for? Let me just use cash. And she explained, well, you need to buy things with a credit card so you can build credit and eventually buy things that you can't afford. And, explained loans to me and everything, right? So the funny thing at that point was I just listened to her. She said, pay off the statement balance every single month. Pay attention to your finances. Don't let the credit card balance go over what you have in your account. And that's it, period. That's how you budget. And I took it and I ran with it. And up until recently, I thought that's what everybody did. So I guess my, you can call it ignorance or just being naive. It's funny because, I really did recently find out that people will just buy things on a credit card and be like, oh, well, I just have to pay it off at some point and I'll just pay some interest. That it honestly blows my mind. So if that answers your question, maybe that's a little bit of financial advice to anybody out there who needs it too.
So you're just like, I'm just financially responsible. And that's a lot more. A lot more than most people can say.
So yeah, if you have a credit card, just don't buy things you can't afford and pay the statement balance off in full every month. That's it.
I think you're selling yourself a little bit short. A lot of people are scared to sell things or just talk to people, but your job is primarily to help people get training, get fitness training, and you have to talk to people all the time. So does that ever make you nervous, or do you ever get social anxiety about stuff like that?
No, I wouldn't say so. Honestly, it's funny because I apparently am very good at my job in that, yes, my job, description in a traditional sense is I have to sell personal training to people. But the thing is, if you really believe in a product or a service that you have to sell, you're not really selling it. You're just talking about it. And that's kind of what I do. So when I sit down to do a member assessment, which, I can do anywhere between 1 and like 10 of them a day. I sit down with the intention of, okay, let me find out what this person is struggling with and what they need and what they're trying to do, because if I can't help them, I know somebody on my team can. And once we identify kind of what they're struggling with and what's holding them from achieving results at the gym or in their nutrition or in general, I can just let them know what we offer and, the all-stars that we have on our team, their certifications, their backgrounds, and their expertise. And I mean, at the end of the day, someone will buy something if they see that the value exceeds the cost. So, everything has a cost. Personal training has a cost. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't. But at the end of the day, it's incredibly valuable. So it's not really hard to sell it. And I don't feel anxiety over selling it because I truly believe in it. And I know that if the person walks away buying the training, I'm not going to turn around and be like, ha, sucker, they're not walking away worse off. They're actually in a much, much better position. And the money that they're spending isn't just money taken. It's an investment in their health that we're just connecting them to it. That's it.
I think that's so true. I had someone I was talking to about getting training 2 days ago say to me, you should sell cars or something. And I just looked at them and I was like, I don't care about cars. And I would be terrible at that job because the only reason why I'm telling you that you need help with your health is because I care. And I think that kind of gives that confidence, like you were saying, because you believe in it. Why did you become a fitness trainer?
Yeah, so I actually, I think this is going to be a very similar story to what a lot of people experience who become trainers is, well, I was going through kind of a hard time trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was honestly clueless. I had no idea what direction I wanted to go. And the year that I was unemployed during COVID was honestly very emotionally stressful for me because I just wanted to have a purpose and I wanted to have a reason. in my life to have an impact on either the world or people or something, I wanted to do something meaningful. I didn't want to go to a 9 to 5 and, you know, check in at my cubicle and stare at a computer all day. That would be miserable. And, you know, I went to the gym every day and I worked out and I loved it and I felt great when I did it. And I had a lot of people who would reach out to me for advice and questions and, you know, even people at the gym who would say, you know, you look great. Are you training for something? Or are you a personal trainer? And, you know, it added up to enough to where I was like, you know, nobody's hiring right now. Let me go ahead and get my certification. Maybe I can do some online training and help people. You know, it's never about the money. It's always about, you know, enjoying what you do and getting the opportunity to change people's lives. So I got my cert and I couldn't find any, you know, quote, and I always laugh when I say this, real jobs, right? Because that's what it seems like when we're about to work for a gym. But working for One Life, you know, I came on board honestly with the intention of staying for a few months and making some money while I looked for some kind of a corporate position, because my parents sent me to business school and, you know, I had to somehow, you know, pay them back and get a job and do all of that. But at the end of the day, I fell in love with what I was doing. And I think a lot of trainers would feel the same way, that maybe they kind of started it as a hobby or something they felt some interest towards, and it ended up spiraling out of control and they fell in love with it.
That's very true. It just spirals.
Spirals. It doesn't stop.
Training for something. You eventually did train for something. And for those who don't know, you are a professional physique competitor with OCB, right?
Bikini, actually, not physique, but
Okay, bikini.
yes. Yep. I did my very first bodybuilding competition in March of 2022. It was a very small show over in Beaufort. And I only had maybe like 4 other girls going up against me, but I got my pro card, which was very exciting. And then the second competition I did, which is my first pro show, now that I had my pro card, was this past May up in Baltimore. And I competed against 24 other girls. So there was 25 of us in the pro bikini division, and I ended up taking 3rd, which was very exciting.
Yeah, that's incredible. To become pro, like your first time competing, is that a normal thing, or does that happen often, or are you an exception?
I think I'm an exception. I don't want to brag or anything, but you know, most people don't really go pro the first time. You know, a lot of people, they spend their entire lives trying to go pro and they don't. But I think when we talk about bodybuilding in general, there's a big focus on like NPC, IFBB, these really big organizations. And they're huge, and there's tons of competitors that go in there. And they're also not natural federations. And what I mean by that is they don't, you know, all the way across the board drug test or, you know, do any kind of polygraph test, which OCB actually does consistently for every single show. I know NPC and IFBB, I know they have some natural shows where they do, I do believe they drug test, but what's kind of nice about the OCB is they drug test every single show, so you can be pretty confident that nobody's kind of getting, you know, sliding in between the lines. And it's a little bit more of a fair fight if you're going to compete naturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So the morals for you in it, you like, and morals meaning the being truthful about being natural or natty.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't, and you know, to each their own. I know a lot of people who they compete not in a natural federation and have been very open about either taking hormones or different types of anabolic steroids. And, you know, they got their glory from it and they had fun, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to see what their potential was, which is respectable as well. But it comes down to intention. And my intention with my first show, to be honest, I was never going to do one, but everybody at work was like, you could step on stage tomorrow and win. And I was like, no, I couldn't. And I ended up registering for a show 3 months out, and I didn't really start my cut until about maybe like 3 weeks out. Just because I told everybody, I'll do minimum effort just to prove to you that I'm not going to win. And I ended up winning. But for me, staying natural it's just important for my health. I wouldn't want to put anything into my body that could have any kind of crazy side effects. And at the end of the day, I am very competitive, but I don't want to say everyone who takes steroids is cheating, but if you were to take steroids and the idea is that steroids are not allowed, and some of these organizations just say, yeah, they're not allowed, but we're not going to check you on it. Theoretically, if they're not allowed, then aren't you cheating?
That's a good point. Are they not allowed in IFBB?
So when an organization has a show and it's not explicitly drug tested, there's going to be non-natural competitors in there. The thing is that a lot of these drugs that people are using are not even legal. So to answer your question, no, they're not allowed, but a lot of these organizations, these bigger ones, the ones that go to the Olympia, they'll look the other way.
I actually, for some reason, it might be just ignorance. I really did think that we're past the point of taking, or people competing, taking actually unregulated testosterone or any other type of steroids. That's kind of crazy to me. For some reason, I thought that we were past the point of taking illegal substances, but I guess we're not.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of crazy because I'm a little bit ignorant, or I was, I guess, a little bit ignorant and naive to all of that when I first started because, it's so widely known that people are taking performance enhancing drugs in these things. You look at any of the major bodybuilders in the Olympia and you can very quickly identify that they're not natural. But since it's so normal and it's so accepted among, the society, I guess, I didn't even realize that they were illegal substances, which it's just me being naive to, why would anybody do that? But yeah, they're doing it, and it's dangerous. It really is dangerous, and bodybuilders pass out, die all the time because they're doing it wrong or too much, or they don't know their limits, and this isn't being monitored by a doctor. They're just listening to their coach who has some experience in it.
Wow. Yeah, I really did think that they were regulating it at least through a doctor. So when you say are you basically going up against people who are taking these illegal substances and you're being tested? Do you think they're still getting away with it?
That's a good question. I don't know. So, I mean, through the OCB, every competitor needs to take a polygraph test the night before the show. And then if you place in the top 3, I believe it is, you need to, provide a urine sample and go through all of that. I know, I mean, for me, that just sounds like, oh, okay, cool. So everybody's natural. And there's that me being naive again, because other people were like, oh, no, there's ways to get around it for sure. There's certain diuretics that don't come up, or if you time it right, it won't come up. Or, you can do this or that. And there's all these tricks. And I'm like, why would anybody go through all of that trouble?
Why do you think they would?
I guess they just want to win, which, it makes sense. We all want to win, but I don't know, if that's a moral compass thing. I mean, I guess it is. I mean, yeah, it's a matter of, if you're going to use any performance enhancing drugs, at least just do the shows that are not drug testing, so that you can keep it fair, at least for the people who are abiding by the rules.
Oh, I don't want to get too philosophical on this yet, but when there are rules in place in society or in competitions. What's your line? Like, is every rule going to be something that you need to follow, or are the rules there for guidelines? Like, what's your kind of take on it in terms of competing and maybe in other things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if you're signing up for something to be in a competition, like competing against other people, uh, I do believe that abiding by the rules is important because you're making an actual decision to do it, to involve yourself in that. As far as, society and the world, I, I'm not going to say I'm a criminal over here, but I do believe that there are rules in place that, some people completely don't abide by, and also they're, victimless crimes for the money to get the government to get your money, if that makes sense. Like, for example, when I was in college, this was actually kind of a funny story. So my college boyfriend and we were at a party, and it was Harbor Fest weekend. So I went to SUNY Oswego, and every summer, kind of towards the end of the summer, right before the semester started, they had Harbor Fest. And we all went up, and, everybody's partying. And that weekend, there's bottles and cans everywhere because everybody's got an open container. And we went to this one party, and we knew that the bars were going to be full of, cops trying to like do a raid and stuff because there was a lot of underage drinking going on. I hope I'm not incriminating myself right now, but we were underage, so we didn't want to bother going to the bars. And we went to this party, and we really weren't drinking much, but we decided to go home, order a pizza, watch a movie. And as we were leaving the party, someone handed me a White Claw and said, "Hey, will you hold this? I need to tie my shoe," something silly. And I just wasn't paying attention. I walked out of the party. Everybody hangs a left and starts going toward the bars. My boyfriend at the time and we go straight across the street. There was a car there with its headlights on us. I didn't think anything of it. I'm still holding this drink. And then we take a right on the sidewalk, and we start walking. And somebody pokes their head out the window and says, "Cops, everyone throw your drink," or something silly like that. And I was like, "What?" And my boyfriend at the time was like, "Drop what you're holding. Where did you even get that?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And I just kind of threw it to the side in the pile of cans and bottles that were in that yard. And it was crazy because we kept walking, and then this police officer shines a light on my back, and from way behind, back where the car was. We had been walking for a second, and she's screaming for me to, pick it up. And I was like, "Pick what up?" Just played dumb. And she was like, "Okay, fine. Put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for open container and littering." And I was like, "What?" And she handcuffed me, sat me on the ground, and then started railing off all these questions about my name, my address, where's my ID. I told her I wasn't going out, and I was very respectful. I said, "I know you're just trying to do your job. I know you're trying to keep me safe, but you need to understand I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just going home." And, she wrote me a ticket. And here's the part that I was like, man, that sucked, was I was sitting on the ground, and I was like, "With all due respect, you can't prove that I had anything." And the other cop, who was just kind of standing next to me, he kicked a bottle of Bud Light, or a can of Bud Light, in my direction. He said, "This was probably yours."
Wow.
Yeah, so that experience obviously really ticked me off because, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Now, our open container, and underage possession of alcohol, are those illegal? Yeah, they are. And I had to pay a fine, and I had to go to court and all of that fun stuff. And it got reduced to whatever because I never got in trouble before. But it was such a bizarre experience going through the court system for that. Because, first of all, why did it get reduced? It got reduced from an open container and possession of alcohol as a minor to 2 counts of open container. And I was like, "What? I only had 1." And, this is where I'm naive again, but it blew my mind that they could just change the charge. I thought it was, you either get this or the charge gets dropped. I didn't know they could just add things. That was weird to me. And when I talked about it later to a friend of a friend who was a cop, he's like, well, yeah, you broke the law. And it was just that cut and dry for him. And anything that was you're breaking the law deserved some crazy fine or, something like that. And I just remember going to my business law class that upcoming semester. And I told my law professor about it. And he was like, oh yeah, well, we'll figure it out. And he worked with me on getting it reduced and everything. But that day in class, he said, can anybody give me an example of a law that's put in place just for the government to get money from you? And I'll never forget it. And I put my hand up. I said, open container. And he said, open container. Perfect. It's a victimless crime. Why is it there? And yeah, that's just something that I kind of reflect on, I guess right now with you asking, where are the lines? But yeah, I think if it's not hurting anyone or causing direct harm, um, I'll bend the rules a little.
Yeah, I remember when I became a lifeguard and I'd gone through all the training of all the rules, and then I was finally on the job, and all the lifeguards were letting kids run on the pool deck, and I was like, but that's a rule. We can't just where is the line here? Like, what are we going to enforce and what are we not? And then it got so bad that it was like if um someone's drowning, it's like, or about to drown, let's say, I was having trouble figuring out, like, okay, am I going to get in trouble for jumping in the water? Because it's like, where's the line? Like, what are we going to enforce and what are we not? And so I think it's just it's a really interesting conversation, because it's like, why are laws there? Why are rules there in the first place? If not to help other people or protect victims, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
You say that you started your first job, which was in trucking, but it was soul sucking. What would be the difference between that job and the job you have now, which is, fitness and helping people get healthy? What what is the difference between the soul sucking job and this one you have now?
Yeah, I mean, that's really an easy one. And ironically, because I'm pretty much working very similar hours. The trucking job, it was a 12-hour shift, but it was from 3 p.m. to 3 in the morning, and it was Monday through Friday, which, you know, for anybody, let alone somebody who just moved to the area and is in their 20s trying to make friends, it's just not a fun job. I was catching up on sleep on the weekends and then dreading going back. Um, I wasn't doing anything really fulfilling. I was really just looking at a computer that told me what freight was getting picked up in the city to be shipped out to other cities, basically. So I was the outbound supervisor, and I just kind of took all of those shipments and figured out which trucks they had to go on, and then supervised the union truck drivers who were loading those trailers. There was nothing rewarding about it. My boss at the time really didn't want me to move up because he was going to, obviously lose me. And I don't think that's a good way to lead. And a lot of the people I worked with they were not fun to be around. Now I get to work on an incredible team. I get to learn from my trainers every day about either different training concepts or, whatever they have going on in their life, they'll tell me about it. And not to mention, I mean, like I said, I get to help people every single day now and connect them with fitness solutions. And it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fulfilling too.
So with fitness and health, you're helping connect people to basically creating a healthier world. And as you know, 50% of the population is diabetic or pre-diabetic, and then, or predicted to become diabetic. And that whole percentage is predicted to rise. And Alzheimer's is expected to triple. And depression has risen like 400% since Prozac has come on the market. And obesity is 72%. So with those numbers, Do you feel like you're making a change in the world like you wanted to with your current job? And what's your perspective on the way our the state of our world right now?
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't know most of those statistics, Brooke. So, that's really eye-opening, kind of in the direction I think a lot of people are going, which is sad. But what I also think is great is that a lot more people, especially younger people, are taking health a little bit more seriously. I mean, one of the biggest problems that we have at our gym is that, it's full of kids, it's full of high schoolers. Back when I was in high school, kids were, hanging out at the mall or, lying to their parents about where they were. Now they're, sneaking their friends into the gym. I'd say that's a good problem to have, right? So, with that being said, I do feel like I get to make an impact. And, maybe one person isn't going to have a big enough impact on all of those statistics in the whole world, but I can help the people in front of me, at least in our community. And, what is it? Is it the rule of sevens rule? Where I'm going to completely botch this, but it's essentially every person is only 7 connections away from anybody in the world.
Oh my gosh. Is that
Yeah,
real?
that's real. So it's like the theory, I'm going to have to look it up or something, but it's so if you were trying to get to Elon Musk, with one person that so somebody that it would only take 7 connections to get to Elon Musk.
Wow.
Yeah. So someone who knows 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 Elon Musk.
If there was one person that you would want to meet 7 people away, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh my goodness. I'm not really sure. There's not a ton of like celebrities and big name people that I follow enough to, be like, oh, that's an easy one, Brooke. But, I guess maybe like one of my favorite artists, I listen to a lot of like EDM and dubstep. And, for anybody who doesn't listen to that kind of music, they are probably like, what? That's random and specific. And, most people don't really like that music. But if you're in the scene, it's a really beautiful community. And the artists are just really great people. At the end of each set, most of them will say something like, take care of each other, be nice to each other. If you're at a festival, there's trash all over the ground. So they'll say, before you leave, pick up a piece of trash and throw it out. And they always send a good message. So probably one of my favorite artists, maybe like Grizz or LS Dream. Those are some pretty good, awesome people who I would love to spend some time with.
Oh yeah, I know that you are a big fan of the music festivals, like the EDM music festivals and things like that. Like, is that the reason why? Is because of the positivity they spread, or what is the reason that you love those festivals and like going?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I mean, that's a good answer. So the first time I went to one, I wasn't even really in the music scene. Like I didn't really listen to it that much, but my friends, they were like, okay, Selena, you're part of our group now. We're all going to this festival. It's called Lost Lands. And when we would hang out, we would listen to like dubstep and stuff, and I wouldn't mind it, but I didn't know any of the songs. I didn't know any of the artists at the time. And, if you have heard of Lost Lands or haven't, it is referred to as dubstep Disneyland. So it's just really heavy bass for 4 days. And it's pretty intense, but it was my first festival. And, I actually didn't get to go to a lot of concerts or let alone any concerts growing up. So this was like my first real show, if you will. And I went up there. It was a camping festival. And, these girls, they all wear these like tiny little outfits. And the cool thing is there's no judgment. You get these people who they finally can feel confident in themselves and what they wear because this is a place of no judgment. And, I've talked to some people who they go to these festivals and they feel like they can truly just express themselves however they want. You'll have people who are, they're overweight, or, they in the real world would otherwise maybe get judged for how they look, and they're wearing these tiny little bikini, like barely even shows anything things, and they feel great, right? But um, if you want to get one of those outfits from like one of the major companies that like sells them, they can get a little pricey. And it was my first festival, so I wasn't sure, do I really want to spend money on this? So I just put something together, and I was kind of unsure about it. But day one, we went into the festival and we were just kind of waiting for some of our friends to catch up. And this girl came up to me and said, "I love your outfit." And for me, I got really excited because I was new to all of this, and, I didn't know what to wear, and I was just kind of guessing. And I was like, "Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is my first festival. I wasn't sure what to do." And she was like, "This is your first festival?" And she got so excited for me. And I was like, "Yeah, it is." And festivals, they do this thing where they exchange like friendship bracelets, and the friendship bracelets are called candy. And she put her two fingers up like a peace sign. And I saw some people doing this, so I knew what to do. But she put her fingers up like a peace sign, and then I did the same. And when we touched fingertips, and then she put up half a heart with her hand, and then I did the other half of the heart and we put it together. And then I guess, like put our hands together and interlinked fingers. And she took one of her bracelets and transferred it over to my wrist. And it was such a wholesome moment. It was my first time doing a candy exchange with somebody, a complete stranger. We just had a nice moment together, and, she shared that with me, and, she just walked away and said, "Happy Loft Lands." And I got like teary eyed, and I look at my friends and they're like, "Oh, you got your first candy." And it was just such a great moment. And from that moment on, like, I kind of just understood, like, this is a whole nother world.
That's exactly how I would describe it listening to it. Like, that is literally what I was going to say. It's a whole separate culture almost.
Crazy because so many people will never get to experience it just because they're like, "Oh, music festivals." I mean, yeah, I don't know if that's my thing, but the community is amazing. It's full of beautiful, beautiful, weird people. And they get to just be themselves and come together, listen to music, and, you know, it's very it's just wholesome. We've had moments, okay, the thing about music festivals is people really get to let out their inner child, which I don't know if you like meditate a lot or if you're kind of into all of those things, but you really get a sense of it when, this is just something that happened at one of the sets. It was heavy music, like head banging, everybody's going nuts. And me and my friends were kind of in the back, and we look over at this guy and he's stirring an imaginary pot, right? And, I go over and I say, "Hey, what are you cooking?" And, he keeps stirring the imaginary pot and he says, "I'm making love soup. You guys want to add some ingredients?" And we were like, "Hell yeah, we do." So, everyone starts pouring in some fake ingredients, some imaginary ingredients. And he was like, okay, it's getting a little full now. I need some help stirring. And, before you know it, 10 of us are stirring this big imaginary pot. And then the soup was ready, and we started just serving it to all the people around us, and everybody's pretending to eat this soup. We're like, "It's love soup." And it's just a beautiful thing. It really is.
I would say so. It's like that connection to people you would normally never get to talk to, would never see anywhere else, we probably would never meet. And you're getting that human connection with them that's based off of imagination or just like you said, a wholesome moment, like something encouraging. When you think about it, I mean, I've been thinking this whole time, your job is centered on talking to people. You're very much in a helping other people mindset. I'm sure there have been times in your life where you've kind of been searching for like your own sort of path and your own meaning. Where would you say that you found that for yourself?
Yeah. I think I'm still finding it. I think, life is kind of about learning about all the different layers that you have. And I think I've started to find some of those. I work a lot. I don't really get a lot of like free time during the week. Everyone always asks like, what are your hobbies? What are you into? And I'm like, I don't know. I like to be outside and I like to do other things. And, more recently, I think as I've started to get a little older, like I've enjoyed starting to self-reflect on, a lot of things. I mean, things that I've gone through in my life that have made me who I am, good and bad, trauma. Not that I've, been so traumatized or anything, but everyone's got trauma. And I think part of, the purpose is just kind of learning how to navigate those things and, find the silver lining and the positive part of it. And just kind of finding who you are and like what kind of an impact you're going to have on the world.
You talk a lot about impact, and that's one of the reasons why you chose the job that you have. Would you say that having a positive impact is your purpose in a sense?
I think that would be a really great way to put it. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I mean, I would love to make that my purpose for sure.
What would be one thing that you would say you would want your life to culminate into? Like maybe that be good interactions with people or the choices that you make, leaving no victims. What do you think you would like your life to emanate or create in other people's lives or in the world?
Um, I think a good example, or maybe an analogy, um, would be kind of like when, Brooke, I mean, you're a lifter, right? You lift weights.
Occasionally.
Yeah. So you understand that when you lift weights, you have to be very intentional with, your muscle contraction and which muscles are engaging and where you feel it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So teaching somebody that who has never worked out, never lifted weights, has very little, if any, self-awareness of their body physically. It can be a little challenging to kind of help them understand that and learn it. I think that is one of the things that I try to do either daily, weekly, monthly, is like help somebody understand something that they currently don't understand, but that would help them. So working out is just one example, how to do things properly, and how to move your body correctly with intention to get the most out of your workout. That's one thing. But also with, understanding relationships in your life, with understanding work-life balance, which is something I'm still working on myself, with understanding, other cultures and with just trying to broaden your horizons of what you understand and what you know. We'll never know everything, and it's always going to be learning. I think that's kind of what my biggest takeaway from life has been, is just you're always going to be learning. You're never done. So I think being part of that process of helping people improve their life through anything and understand that there's a bigger picture, I think that would be it.
There's a saying, and I think it goes something like the moment you stop learning is the moment you choose to die.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
When you think about yourself, I would describe you as someone who seems very grounded. And this podcast is called Mainstay for the purpose of thinking about each person's mainstay. What is the driving force behind their actions or their daily walk? And of course, that changes every day for a lot of people. Like one day you're doing errands, one day you're working, and there might be different focuses. But usually there's something that keeps people motivated in the darkest times. What would you say has been that kind of light in the darkness for you?
Oh, that's a deep question. I mean, if I had to reflect on, struggles and, just times of darkness where it's like, man, I wish I wasn't in this position, or I wish this wasn't happening. We've all been there and had that just like gut wrenching, like, man, I wish I could do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I guess I just have always had a lot of hope. things get better, period, always. And there's really no argument against it. There are going to be good times and there are going to be bad times. But the bad times can't possibly be forever. They have to end at some point. The world and life is all about balance. And if we want to have times of enjoyment and light and greatness, then we also need to go through some struggle. So I think just remembering that at the end of the day, if things aren't okay, then, it's not over yet.
That's really profound. Where do you think that you have a culmination of learning that throughout your life, or did you learn that from an early age, or when did you learn that concept, like to hold on to hope?
I'm not really sure. It's, I think it's just something that has, continued to grow in me, good times, bad times, good times, bad times. I mean, I've got 26 years of it at this point, right? Mm-hmm. So, reflecting on the times when, and, maybe anybody listening can really like feel this, reflecting on times when you're curled up in a ball, crying, sobbing, hurting, and almost like clutching your heart in pain because you hate your situation, because you can't stand the way something is going. When you're, a little girl in 5th grade and your crush doesn't like you and he says he likes another girl, that's what that is. But when you become an adult, it becomes, oh, I can't pay my mortgage, or my car broke down, or, the person I thought was the love of my life, left me for someone else. Like, it could be a million different things, but we're gonna go through ups and downs, and the ups have always come after. There have always been good times after those heart-wrenching moments. There have always been, silver linings at the end of a lesson that you at the time wish you didn't have to go through, but you went through it, and, you're a better person for making it through. I always joke, in horror movies, if I were to ever get kidnapped and tortured, people say, oh, well, I would just end it. If I had the opportunity, I'd rather just end it myself than go through all that torture. But I thought about that, and it's like, I don't think I could. I don't think because what would hold me back is, well, what if my hero just ran through the door 10 seconds after? I would just be holding on to that hope of, nope, I'm going to get out of this somehow. And, it could be the death of me someday. Who knows? But it's gotten me through some dark times. And I think that advice has gotten some other people through those times. If you can just remember, just keep going, get through it, it'll end. It will. It can't go forever.
I think that's really the key to those moments of sadness too. I'm thinking back to all the moments in my life where I've been super upset and it does feel like it's going to last forever. In those moments, if we can remember that it's temporary, it's not going to be forever, it's just for now, that would really change the present moment, even if it's hard. And then that hope aspect, I think, is a game changer. Is your hope specifically that life will get better? And is your basically is hope in itself, like hoping for better, that's your hope. That's your guiding light, is just that there is hope.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And, when it comes to just anything else in life, something's not going your way. I don't remember if this was a quote or something somebody told me once, but it was essentially that when you ask, God or the universe or whatever it is that you believe in for something, let's say I'm asking for, a promotion. And I'm up for promotion against another person and they get the promotion. Okay. What is going to get me through that moment? It's not just hope, like hope of what at that point, right? But it's the fact that when you ask the universe or God or whatever higher being you believe in for something, there's going to be 3 possible answers you get. The first is yes, which would be great, right? The second is not right now, right? And everything happens for a reason. So there's a reason it's not happening right now. But it will happen later. Maybe you're not ready. And then the third thing is no, because I have something better. So I think at the end of the day, we don't see the bigger picture, and we may never know what it is, hopefully someday. But I think it's important to understand that things do happen for a reason, and that if you don't get your way, it could be a blessing in disguise.
Do you have any advice for people who may be listening right now who are wondering how you can be so positive all the time or happy? If they're chasing happiness, like what kind of advice would you leave with them today?
I truly, I sound very positive. I struggle with things sometimes myself. So it's not like you can look at somebody who's so positive and happy and optimistic and say, wow, I wish I could be like that. Because you can be like that. You can choose to be like that. And, that's your kind of annoying answer is you choose to be a happy person or not. You can be in a phenomenal situation. Everything's going right and you're still a miserable person. Or you can be, financially not well. You can have the worst luck in the dating world, and you can be happy because you know who you are, and you know that there is a greater purpose, and there's just trust in the universe, and you can do a lot of different things. There's a lot of different ways to navigate this life, but at the end of the day, it comes with a lot of looking in the rearview mirror. I've gone through good and bad times, and I'm going through some things right now that maybe this talk is helping me kind of sort through it a little bit as well, which is thank you for having me on. But at the end of the day, you really need to reflect on how you handled a situation and maybe how you could have handled it better in a very sustainable, healthy way. We all have the power to be super toxic and just react instead of respond. But if we start to notice those patterns in ourselves, slowly but surely, not immediately, we'll get better at the relationships in our lives. And we'll just be a little bit more at peace. I think one thing that gives me a lot of peace is just that there is a bigger picture. And maybe some people aren't very spiritual, but my philosophy is really just we can't just go into nothing. I think that the truth is a lot stranger than fiction. And I think that there is way more at the end of this life. But I also think that we're all here for a reason. And, we kind of need to go through this level before we can move on. And it's just, at the end of the day, we're just on a big floating rock through space. None of this actually matters. None of our societal problems at the end of our life are truly, truly going to matter. And I think a great way to figure out how important a problem is, am I going to remember this 5 years from now? Am I going to remember it 10 years from now? If I remember it, maybe I will because it's a big deal right now, but.
Oh, I think you cut out. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. You said, does it matter? Will it matter in 5 minutes? What did you say after that?
I said, sorry, I was getting a phone call. Let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb.
I almost did that earlier, so no worries.
I was just saying, is it going to matter in 5 years? Is it going to matter in 10 years? If it's not going to matter, why are we putting so much stress into it? If it's not even going to be something we remember, it can't be that big of a deal. And, I finish all of it by saying just we're flying around on a big floating rock that's just soaring through space right now. At the end of the day, none of our societal problems really, truly matter that much. Of course they matter because we're in it and we're here and we're living and we're just a bunch of ants right now and we're having to go through it. But if you can think bigger picture, that idea of us just happening to exist and happening to have built this society, gives me a little bit of peace of mind that, maybe I don't need to be that stressed out.
There was I can't remember who said it, but recently I heard someone say people want more out of life and they're asking why we're here, but we exist. Isn't that a miracle enough? And it really made me start thinking how rare it is for each of our chromosomes to make who we are, and it is a miracle that we exist in the first place. And it's truly crazy. You say everything happens for a reason. The circumstances to have us meet, and you basically hired me. um I happened to apply at this gym that I had a recollection of, and it just, the crazy happenstances of life, the culmination of everything is just, it's substantially mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And, I think the argument that we're just here and, there's no rhyme or reason for it, and we just, are a bunch of particles that happen to exist. I don't agree with it. I think we are here for a reason. I think there's a way bigger picture. And, I mean, we could have probably a whole nother podcast talking about other dimensions and universes and theoretical, planets, and, how our souls and our spirits navigate that. But yeah, I think that would be for another day, perhaps.
Maybe. If anyone's looking to compete or looking to change their lives, looking to get a different job because you're in a soul-sucking one, should they enter that competition? What kind of job should they look for? Any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the people who are looking to compete, my best advice is do it, but understand that bodybuilding is incredibly unhealthy and unsustainable. You can do it to the best of your ability as sustainably and carefully and healthfully as you possibly can. But just remember, you are probably somebody who's getting into this because they lift weights and they take care of their body. Don't let that go down the drain for the sake of a competition. It's really not that important. You should just be doing it for, the sake of competition, having fun and seeing what your body's capable of, but don't take it to dangerous limits. That's my best advice, which is very easy to do. Don't get lost. And then for somebody who's looking for a job and they're not sure what their purpose is, you're in a soul-sucking job. Leaving my soul-sucking job was the best thing I ever did. I had a lot of savings to support me when I quit. I put in a 2 weeks notice and COVID hit, and gratefully, I had a savings because my backup job did fall through. It was in the hotel industry, believe it or not. So if you're going to leave the soul-sucking job, have a backup. If it's another miserable job that you don't like, at least it's hopefully better than the other one, and it might be able to guide you in the right direction. I would say opt for something where you'll be in contact with a lot of people, because even with my current job, despite the fact that I think I've found what I want to do, I meet tons of people every single day in tons of different industries. And if I wasn't happy in my current role, I probably have a massive network of people that would help me find a role that I do like. So, not to say use your job to find another job, but we're just, it's not bad advice.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast today. And I wish you every happiness, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brooke. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It means a lot that you thought of me, and invited me on. And I'm really glad we did it. I feel like I actually got some self-reflection out of it as well. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, and you're the first guest.
Ooh, awesome. I can't wait to hear it.